Our senator is here. She really needs no introduction, but I'm going to do it anyway. Well before she landed in the Senate, Elizabeth Warren earned a reputation as a champion of the middle class and a fearless consumer advocate. In fact, she participated in one of our then 5th District days, and I remember how very impressive she was as she was promoting the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, and very, very memorable to all of us were there. In 2012, we know Massachusetts had the great foresight to elect Elizabeth to the Senate based on her pledge to address the growing income disparity and revive the American dream. And I think that's an issue that is very much playing itself out in this year's presidential election. And I think we have to give her all the credit for initiating that conversation and recognizing what a challenge it was among so many Americans. In the Senate, she has quickly amassed an impressive legislative record and has taken on causes aimed at leveling that playing field. The first bill she filed was the Bank on Student Loans Fairness Act, which would have curbed interest rates on federally subsidized student loans. This has proved to be an uphill fight, but I can tell you it's an issue I hear about wherever I go, how families and students are wrestling with the cost of higher education, even as we ever more are dependent upon our students making their way through some years of college. Her other efforts have included the bipartisan introduction of a 21st Century Glass-Steagall Act, which would install safeguards to prevent another financial crisis. We members of Congress meet every day, a couple or two couples who spend their days in the halls of the basement, really promoting that issue. Her unique expertise has made her a prominent voice in the national discourse around the financial industry. Her national profile has not been a distraction from her work in Massachusetts. In fact, on Monday, she was in Lowell with the Small Business Administration, helping over 250 Massachusetts small businesses connect with federal government agencies and prime contractors to learn about upcoming business opportunities. I was sorry to miss it. And on Tuesday, she was in Lawrence meeting with the mayor and the Greater Lawrence Community Action Council to talk about child health care, social services, youth programs, and other things that we offer to the people of Lawrence. So please join me in welcoming Senator Elizabeth Warren, a great way to conclude a very good day.
Really terrific to be here. I love the 3rd District Day. I'm trying to think how many times now you've invited me to come and speak, and I will always keep coming. So this is fun. One of the principal reasons, though, that I wanted to be here is because Nikki Tsongas is a terrific partner, and she's out there working tirelessly on behalf of people in the 3rd District every single day. And I am glad to have the opportunity to be able to be her partner in fighting for families. You know, she is a leader on key issues that face our Commonwealth. She is the one who is leading our efforts to support our service members and to make sure that they are treated fairly. She is helping lead the fight to invest in education for our kids and help grow our economy. And she is the one who has led the fight to see the first urban national park of its kind in Lowell. I just actually have to, I think this one is fabulous. Something that makes it work. So, it is a real treat to be here. It is a treat to have a chance to work with Nikki on all of these issues and to work with our whole delegation. I want to mention a couple of things. They may have already been talked about, but I just want to mention them because I think they are so powerfully important. One of the things we have worked on together is to get the Department of Defense to make the investment in modernizing and upgrading the research and laboratory facilities at MIT Lincoln Labs at Hanscom Air Force Base. And I'm very pleased that we were able to get $265 million to do that. This is one of those places where the investments pay off, not just locally, they pay off internationally, and they pay off over a very long arc on time. The upgraded Lincoln Labs will strengthen the already significant investments that are already there and have very positive influence, I think, on the Massachusetts economy, on high-tech job growth. But making sure that Lincoln Labs has adequate resources also means making sure that our soldiers who are deployed all around the world have the latest in technology, that we both help them be safer and more effective in their jobs. And I am proud that that work is done in Massachusetts, and proud that we could partner up to do everything we can to support that. So I want to say a big thank you to Nikki. I'm also glad to be here because Nikki has been such a leader in preserving Massachusetts' historical and cultural and natural sites. She has been someone who has emphasized the importance of federal investment in the efforts around Lowell National Historic Park as an example of a federal partnership and some federal assistance with state and local governments and with private partners, and that built something quite extraordinary that no one group could build on their own. And right now, we're both working hard to make sure that the Nashua River is part of the National Park Service's Wild and Scenic Rivers program. Isn't that a great sounding program, the Wild and Scenic Rivers? We want the Nashua River as part of that, and we want the kind of federal support that comes along with it. So it's going to be a big part of what we continue to work on. You know, this is what we work on. We work on the investments in education, the investments in infrastructure, the investments in basic research that help build a future for ourselves and help build a future for our children. Recently, we were thrilled by the fact that the City of Lowell was awarded a $13.4 million Tiger grant by the Department of Transportation. And it was really something to get kind of into the weeds. A lot of people apply for these Tiger grants across Massachusetts, and a lot of people apply all around the country. You know, every locality is looking for a few extra dollars from the federal government. But this is one of those that it was the story that we were able to tell about what the 8 bridges, you know, the 6 canal bridges and the extra 2 bridges, the difference they would make in safety. That's always part of your story. You've got to explain it. Fire trucks can't go across those bridges because they're not strong enough to hold them. But what they would mean to the area and to the investments that everybody else had made. And so it was a wonderful discussion about the fact that the city had come up with money, that the state had come up with money, that UMass Lowell had come up with money, that private industry had come up with money. And our pitch was, if only the federal government would come up with another $13.4 million, it will be like the keystone of the arch. That really makes the whole thing work. And we got on the phone, we talked to a lot of people, we did our homework first, really had the right story to tell. And it turned out to be a real success. And in a world where, I'm just gonna be blunt, it's hard to get those extra federal dollars, the dollars that everybody else is competing for. It really means you gotta get out there and you gotta work it. And you've gotta work it in the sense of telling a coherent reason why there's gonna be more benefit to a community, more benefit to a state by investing federal dollars here as opposed to spending them somewhere else. And so it was really, it was a joint effort, but it was an exercise, and for me, the reminder about the best role the federal government can play. And that's not thinking up the projects, it's not ramrodding the projects, it's listening to the local communities who've developed the projects, who've already put their skin in the game, and the federal government can be sort of the one to help close it and make sure the deal really works. And so I think that Congresswoman Tsongas deserves a real round of applause on this one. Since I have this chance, I just want to talk about one more thing before I close up. And that is, as Nikki said, there are a lot of issues I'm working on, there are a lot of issues I'm out there and I'm loud on. But I gotta say, if we don't do a better job in this country of helping young people get a post-secondary education without getting crushed by student loan debt, this country will fundamentally change, and it will not change for the better. We now live in a world where students and those who are already through school owe a collective $1.3 trillion. Just think about how this is now a snowball that rolls on its own. So it's not only the new debt that young students acquire, everybody acquires when they start out, it's that the interest rate on the existing snowball is huge, and it's rolling over people. Today, college graduates today, 70% of them have to borrow money to make it through school. And so we live in a world where increasingly, much more so than when I was a kid, we're saying to young people, you've got to get out there and you've got to get an education if you're even going to have a ticket to get on the train to have a chance at making it to the middle class. You've got to get that education. But unlike ever before in America, we say to those young people, and the biggest part of the cost is going to be shoved off on you. The taxpayers are going to pick up less of it. The school costs are going through the roof. And I'll just be blunt, very little accountability around this. It's lots of money that's pouring in from the federal government, and the federal government, in my view, is doing two things that are just fundamentally wrong. One is on the student loans. The federal government is now set up to make a profit on the backs of our students. We charge our students so much money that it not only covers the administrative costs of getting it done, the bad debt losses, the cost of the funds, but it produces literally tens of billions of dollars in profits that are now used to run the federal government. So that we're saying, in effect, to young people, you get out there and get an education, but if you're not quite rich enough for your family to be able to just write a check for tuition and books and housing and fees, then we're just going to put an extra tax on you. And you have to pay not just the sticker price of school, you've got to pay back a student loan that produces profits to help run the rest of the government. You have to start the great race in life 10 yards behind the starting line because of this student loan debt. And this, in my view, is where the government is wrong. We should be helping young people get an education, not making a profit off their backs. So for me, that's number one. And then I just want to say a second thing about it. We also, on the federal side, need to be much more aggressive about accountability for where that money goes. You know, schools have been in a position where they can afford to raise the price, and then say, go to the federal government and borrow the money. We need some basic accountability, and I'm not talking about, you know, the slim differences among schools. I'm talking about way out on this spectrum. And let me just leave you with one thought about this as you look at what's happening with colleges across this country right now. Three numbers: 10, 20, 40. More than 10% of all people who are in college today are in a for-profit college. They're not at state schools, they're not at private nonprofits. They are in a college that is making enough money to put a return on investment and dividends to shareholders. That's the kind of college they're in. Those colleges and students are sucking down more than 20% of all the federal dollars that are going now into helping students in higher education. The Pell Grants, the student loans, and those students who get those loans are now responsible for 40% of all of the defaults in the federal system because they pay and pay and pay to these for-profit colleges and end up with a piece of paper that is not enough to help them get a decent job. I remember when Marty Meehan was still president at UMass Lowell, and we did an event at UMass Lowell. I'm trying to remember, did you come to that one too, Nikki? You came out with some of them. We had service members. It was all about UMass Lowell. We had Holly Petraeus from the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau come down. And we were talking about how to help people, our young vets, make it into school. And UMass Lowell, for any of you who don't know, has a really aggressive program of trying to reach out, trying to recruit vets, trying to make sure that once they get there, that they get the kind of support they need to make the transition into full-time students and to make it on through school, make good choices while they're there. And Marty said, he said, we can educate students here at UMass Lowell. We can educate our vets. We've got the program set up. We are ready. We can give our vets exactly what they need for liftoff. But he said, I can't do it when they show up already $65,000 in debt from a for-profit college, and they don't have one single college credit that will transfer to an accredited school like UMass Lowell. In my view, it is an absolute scandal that the federal government is not more aggressive in policing where that money goes and making sure that the federal money for higher ed makes it to the schools that are really trying to deliver a first-rate, affordable education to our students. That's what I think this is all about. So, I could talk about all of this all day long. Have I got a minute or two for questions? I'm looking at, can we do a couple of questions? If anybody has a question, I would be glad to take it. Yes, sir.
Are there good for-profit colleges, and what standards, how do we know if they're good enough to be there?
So it is a fair question, and I think the answer we know right now is that the for-profit colleges are concentrated near the bottom. Doesn't mean every single for-profit college is at the bottom. But for example, we've got a group of schools, and I don't remember the exact number on this, for which 50% or more of those who have attended the school are in default on their student loans, can't pay their student loans. 85% of those schools are the for-profits. So they populate this part. For me, it's about independent criteria. Are you graduating students? And are you graduating them in a timely fashion? And once they graduate, can they get a decent job and pay back their education loans? Tell me those parts, and then I'm a lot more ready to get on board. But the simple idea that we keep shoveling out federal dollars and more of our young people get trapped in student loan debt, because remember, they can't pay, it falls on the taxpayer, but they can't pay also means their economic lives are ruined. Their credit is destroyed. They will never be able to get a car loan. They will never be able to get a home mortgage. And these debts don't go away. You can't discharge them in bankruptcy. They are there in effect forever, and the debt just keeps multiplying. So we're knocking people out at the beginning of their young lives, and we're letting for-profit colleges do it because their business model is to try to get to our federal student loan program. I think that's just wrong. Thank you. Yes, sir. So, I have to tell you, Nikki was right. The very first bill I ever introduced just said, look, we've got this student loan program. We lend money every single day through the Federal Reserve. We lend money to giant banks, not to small banks. We do it for giant banks every single day. And I said, seems to me, just for risk, that's fine. We ought to be charging students the same amount that we are charging giant banks. Now, needless to say, the giant banks did not think that was a good idea. They like where they are, paying less, at the time it was less than 0.5% interest rate, at a time when our students are paying, depending on the program they're in, 6%, 8%, 10%, some are even 12 and even 14%. And the private student loans go up even from there. When I introduced that bill in the Senate, it had exactly one sponsor, me. Over time, we kept talking about this in the Senate, talked about it in the House, and more to the point, talked about it nationally. And eventually came back with a bill that had a higher interest rate than the big banks get, but basically at roughly about 3.5%, which at least squeezed most of the profits out of the system. Interestingly enough, even at 3.5%, federal government still makes a skinny little profit, but at least we wring all that money out of the system. And over time, we got every single Democrat on board for it, and we got 3 Republicans on board. But I'll just be blunt here. That's not enough in the United States Senate, where it takes 60 votes to move anything because of the filibuster rules, and we couldn't get a vote in the House. So this is one of those things I've learned. It changes slowly over time, and you just keep beating on it every single day. Because I will also say this is one of those issues that is not partisan. The voting on it is partisan right now. This is a Democrats issue, and the Republicans are no, I can't hear you, with, like I said, 3 people voted the other way. But you talk to people across this country, you look at the polling data on this one across the country, Democrats, Republicans, independents, libertarians, vegetarians, they all believe we should not be making a profit off the backs of our students. They all believe we need more accountability for the rising costs of college. They all believe we can do better. So it's taken us a while to get, this is a big, heavy ship around here. But I truly believe this is one we're going to get done. We will get this done. Yes, ma'am. Uh-huh.
I know that, and I don't know if it went up on appeal, but recently there was a case in Minnesota, I think, where the bankruptcy judge said he was going to discharge student loan debt. Had a very specific set of facts, and he was giving child supervision. But this is a real problem, and the bankruptcy court is going to look at it. In my law practice, I don't do what my law partner does. He has people coming in that are 60s, owing the government, $90,000, $100,000, and with nothing. And is there any talk about some relief in bankruptcy for some of these people?
So thank you so much for raising this. I was afraid I would just keep talking forever on this. But this is so powerfully important. I just want to make sure everybody follows this. The kind of the image we all have in our minds about who's getting crushed by student loan debt are young people straight out of college, and we should have that image in mind. Right now, by the way, for all of you who just worry about the economy, you have no kids in school, you know no kids in school, you are related to no one who will either has recently gone to school or that you'll need to go to school, you hire no one in those circumstances. Nonetheless, you should care about this huge student loan burden. The Fed, the Treasury Department, and the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau have all 3 done studies now that say young people are not doing the things economically that we would project that they do at this, at certain points in their lives because of student loan debt. So they're not moving out of mom and dad's house. They're not buying cars. They're not saving up and buying homes at the right point. And this is having a depressing, they're not starting small businesses, by the way. Small business formation among the group of people who have student loan debt is depressed. So every part of this is pulling back on the economy. That is where the core part is, but understand, people in their 40s, in their 50s, in their 60s, in their 70s are also hung in student loan debt. In some cases, it's student loan debt from 15 years ago, they lost a job, never paid, and then the snowball starts rolling, right? And $9,000 worth of debt becomes 18, becomes 36, right? And we just keep dealing with the numbers. In some cases, it's people who lost their jobs in their mid-40s, their mid-50s, and thought, I know, I'll go back and I'll get a master's degree, and with a master's degree, now I'll be ready to go back into the job market. And they found out when they got on the other side, the job just wasn't there for them. There was nobody who wanted to hire them, or whatever they could get hired for just wasn't enough to pay the student loan debt. The third group are the mamas and daddies and grandparents and aunts and uncles who co-signed to help that kid make it through. And now the kid can't do it. I mean, it's just not there. The money's not there. So we have people, just want you to understand this, whose Social Security checks are being garnished to pay student loans. That's what it means in America today, the student loan debt. So you would think bankruptcy it's not a great solution. Nobody wants to go to bankruptcy, right? But at least bankruptcy would be there. And here's the answer. You want to go to the mall and run up $1 bazillion on your credit cards, and then you say, I don't have a job, can't pay for it. We got a bankruptcy discharge for you, right? You want to go gamble You go to one of the casinos and you drop that credit card 40 times in a row and you end up with $1 bazillion worth of gambling debts that you can't pay. We got a bankruptcy discharge for you. But you try to get an education. You go out there and you borrow money, and I want to be clear, federal money or private money, to try to get an education, and the answer is that debt sticks with you like white on rice. It will be there until you find a way to pay it off, and it will continue to run at interest. And the gap in the bankruptcy laws to let people through, talk about the eye of a needle. There's an occasional person who makes it through, but I read these cases for years. I mean, this was the area I worked in, where people who have stage 4 cancer, where people who haven't worked, who are severely disabled, people who are in their 70s, who are just, they're not going to be able to come back and deal with this debt. And the answer is no, 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 it is non-dischargeable. You know, there are times, I spend most of my life talking about economics. The economics of the family, the economics of the country, the economics of the world. But there are times there are things that go beyond economics. This is a moral question. This is what kind of a people are we? That we are the richest nation on earth, and that we will continue to take people who have demonstrated, this is it, I am out, I have nothing. I have no assets and no reasonable prospects going forward. And the answer is, we'll get rid of all the other stuff, but we're going to keep that student loan debt wrung around your neck until you die. And I just got to say, that is fundamentally wrong. We are better than that as a people, and we have to do better than that as a government. So this is how I feel about this. Anybody have one more question? Yes.
One of your peers spoke earlier about increasing the overall, basically, worker participation in society.
Yep.
And can you have increasing the overall worker participation in society? And do you have any thoughts on how we might be able to accomplish that?
So I think that is a great question. How do we get more people back into the workforce? And I'm going to mention 3, although I'm sure we could all sit here together and probably come up with a total of, 10. But the ones I want to mention are structural ones. If we lived in an America today where childcare was readily available and affordable and trustworthy and smelled good for all of our children, that there were spots available for 6-month-old babies, I just got to be blunt. We would have much higher workforce participation among parents. And so every time we think we are saving money by saying, no, not our job, to make those investments in childcare opportunities and after-school programs, I mean, every part of this for taking care of children, what we're really saying is it suits us fine. Just to squeeze a part of the workforce and say it's all going to be on your shoulders. So maybe if you're a lawyer or a doctor, you can afford that. But, if you're kind of one of the mid-range workers, it doesn't make any economic sense for a lot of folks to try to work under those circumstances. So there's at least one structural change we could make for workforce participation. The second one I want to mention is the Earned Income Tax Credit. This is one of those things, I was not originally a huge fan of the Earned Income Tax Credit. You all know what it is. If you work, but you're right at the bottom of the income ladder, the Earned Income Tax Credit says, in effect, that in return for working, we're going to give you some tax credit for that work, and it means that once a year, right now, when you file for your taxes, you're going to get, and it's a formula for how it works, you're going to get money back. It's back. You're going to get additional money. You're going to get an additional payment. It makes work pay better for people with children. It's just that straightforward. That calculation about, does it pay for me to go to Walmart today and stand on my feet all day long if I got to pay the babysitter and drop off? It changes that calculation. And I think that is just powerfully important. And I should say, by the way, in December, when we got through the omnibus spending bill. It had a bunch of stuff in it I was not crazy about, but one of the pieces it had in it, and something that matters, we saw the numbers for the 3rd District on this, is during the financial crash, and we were trying to get some stimulus money into the economy, we temporarily expanded both the eligibility for the Earned Income Tax Credit and the number of dollars that go into it, and then we watch the effects. More people who get out there and work, God bless them. It was going to expire in 2017. And as part of the trade-offs, there were a lot of different lobbyists here lobbying for different parts they wanted in the tax code. One of the trade-offs was that we made that expansion permanent. And that just helps bring more workers into the workforce, and I think that's powerfully important. And then I'm just going to mention one more, transportation. If we really want workforce participation, then we've got to invest in mass transit. We got to invest in all the ways to make it cheap to get back and forth. And in a Commonwealth like Massachusetts, this is the potential for just totally life-altering and economy-altering differences. You know, the short version on this is the American Society for Civil Engineers says that we are about $2.5 trillion underinvested in infrastructure. They give our current infrastructure a D-, that is crumbling bridges, worn out cars on the T, all of the pieces. And they say it's because for 35 years now, we've just been underspending what it takes to keep a transportation system 21st century, state of the art, where you are. And so, and this is true on all infrastructure, I should be fair, the Americans, because they're also talking about water, they're talking about communications, the other pieces of infrastructure, but particularly on transportation. Think how different every part of what you do in Massachusetts would be today if we had been making those investments all along. If we really had the hard rail, if we really had upgraded, so we were using our rivers, right? If we really had all of the pieces of transportation infrastructure, then again, it just changes the calculation. It changes the number of places you can apply for a job. It changes for the businesses, the number of people who can apply for your jobs and how you find your workers. That's the kind of thing that helps us build a vibrant economy going forward. So I picked 3. I could probably keep going on for a long time about it, but I think these are just absolutely critical in how we get more workforce participation and more productivity out of the workforce that we have. So Jason is going to drop a net over me, drag me out of here. This is his job, because I really would stay all day. I do all the Q&A. But again, I just want to thank you for being here in Washington, and most of all, I want to thank Nikki for putting this on and for being such a great partner to all of us here in Massachusetts. So thank you, Nikki.
Well, that's a great day, absolutely a great final speaker for what's been a really interesting day. And obviously, I think we in Massachusetts can be so proud that we have elected Senator Warren, who thinks out of the box all of the time and proposes solutions that attempt to move us ahead. I want to say that for anybody who's been taking pictures today, we have a location if you want to send them to hashtag 3rd District Day, which is 3RD District Day, and then we will post them. We'll post some of them. I want to thank you all for being here, for being the attentive audience that you've been, and for coming from the great 3rd District and making your way to Massachusetts. Thank you so much, and we'll see you back in the district.